It is an honor for me to continue to fight for those that cannot speak for themselves, the unborn. You know, during the presidential campaign last year, at the Saddleback Civil Forum with Pastor Rick Warren, then candidate Obama made clear his goal was to reduce the number of abortions. In fact, he said that he had inserted this into the Democratic platform. How do we reduce the number of abortions? Now, given the administration's expressed support for Roe v. Wade, I never expected, nor did I ever expect it to suddenly reverse its course. However, one way to reduce the number of abortions, and a way that works, and one that is common ground issue for the American people, is to not allow taxpayer-funded abortions, period. Violating the consciousness of millions of pro-life Americans to fund a procedure to which they object based upon deeply held religious and moral beliefs by allowing taxpayers to fund abortions may actually increase the number of abortions performed. According to the Guttmacher Institute, the research arm of Planned Parenthood, approximately 30% of Medicaid-eligible women are less likely to seek out abortions when taxpayer reductions are in place. You know, just a few weeks ago at the Notre Dame commencement, our president said, quote, "Let's honor the conscience of those who disagree with abortions and draft a sensible conscience clause and make sure that all of our health care policies are grounded in clear ethics and sound evidence." He actually said this after his administration had begun the process of rescinding the conscience clause regulations promulgated by the Bush administration. These regulations made it clear that a health care provider would not have to choose between his or her deeply held moral and religious beliefs and his or her career. And this brings me to the point that I would like to focus on this morning. The president seems to have stated that he would like to reduce the number of abortions. The research arm of Planned Parenthood tells us that if we do not provide taxpayer funding for abortions, the number of abortions would likely be decreased. And according to a recent Gallup poll, we know that a majority of Americans now describe themselves as pro-life, and an even greater majority of Americans believe there should be restrictions on abortions. So continuing policies that deny taxpayer funding for abortions would appear to be a way to reduce the number of abortions. And it is actually a way to find common ground, what the president wants, on this issue. This brings me to the point that I would like to focus on. The president seems to have stated that he'd like to reduce the number. And yet, I am surprised to find that in the president's budget, the administration proposed to make taxpayer-funded abortions available in the District of Columbia. Let me explain. Due to the Constitution's treatment of the District of Columbia, the entire budget of our nation's capital is appropriated by this Congress. Prior to 1989, the District of Columbia was free to use congressionally appropriated funds, the taxpayers' money, to fund abortions. Its history in this regard is not good. During this time, its permissive policies on public funding of abortions was a slap in the face to taxpayers morally opposed to abortion. The district government funded abortions for everyone, not just Medicaid recipients or those in need. In fact, in 1985, the district budget director confirmed for the Philadelphia Inquirer, quote, "The district's government has a policy of funding abortion on demand and does not attempt to determine the circumstances of the pregnancy." In 1988, when Congress was considering appropriations for the FY 1989 funding for the District of Columbia, an amendment was added that prohibited any taxpayer funds from being used for abortion, except in the cases of where carrying the child to term would endanger the life of the mother, or in the cases of rape and incest. The so-called Dornan Amendment has been retained by this Congress when considering appropriations for the District of Columbia. In the few years when this amendment was not retained, the district reverted to its prior abortion policy to pay for abortion on demand. In fact, during that time, the district used $1 million from medical charities fund to fund a fund that was to help AIDS victims to pay for abortions. So what the administration proposes to do is to create fiction. Under this proposal, the district would be barred from using, quote, federal funds, but because all of their funding is appropriated, they could simply designate accounts as local funds and fund local abortions or any abortion on demand. And who would be getting these abortions? It's impossible to know. The Guttmacher Institute says it's impossible to obtain accurate statistics on abortions performed in the District of Columbia because people from other places and other states came to have abortions performed. And DC law allows minors to receive abortion services without parental consent. It is wrong for us to even consider the change. Taxpayer funds should not be used to fund abortions, and it certainly should not be used to pay for abortions for minors. I hope this Congress will help bring this administration's actions back in line with what was said at the Saddleback Convention and at Notre Dame. I would like to now turn this over to Virginia Fox, one of our wonderful pro-life members.